Our friends were like, this is the dumbest idea ever. The amount of work it takes to market a product is going to be the same no matter what you sell. So why not spend that effort on something that will make your life easier? Today, you don't even need to sell. You just need to be likable. When we hit six figures, all of a sudden, my friends who were busting their butts as lawyers and whatever, they went up to me and they said, hey, I want a side hustle also.
Steve, you're just one of those entrepreneurs that people listen to, they see online, and they're like, yes, this is somebody I absolutely want to learn from. Walk us through the moment when you and your wife decided to start online business instead of continuing on the traditional path.
Yeah, it really just started when my wife became pregnant with our first child. And she went up to me and she said, Steve, you know what? I'm going to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom. And normally, most people wouldn't be freaking out. But I started freaking out because we live in the Silicon Valley, and this part of California is probably one of the most expensive places to live. And if you want a good house and a good school district, you pretty much need two incomes. On the flip side, though, my parents were first-generation Chinese, and they worked all around the clock. So I didn't get a chance to see them as much as I would have liked. So I was fully on board with this. I was fully on board, but I wasn't sure where the money was going to come from. And that's when we decided to start selling handkerchiefs online. And that sounds really random, but 3 years earlier, when we got married, I remember we spent a lot of money on the wedding, a lot of money on photography. And my wife was like, you know what? I don't want to be caught in photos drying my tears, with Kleenex or ratty tissues, were her exact words. And she's a crier. So we ended up looking all over the place for handkerchiefs, couldn't find them anywhere, actually, in the United States. Finally, we found this factory in China, but you had to buy a whole bunch. So we ended up buying a couple hundred of them and using maybe like a handful, maybe like 10 or 12. And then we just listed the rest on eBay just on a whim, just to get rid of them. And they ended up selling like hotcakes. And that's why we decided to revisit that idea. And even though our friends were like, this is the dumbest idea ever, the business ended up making $100,000 in profit in our first year, which replaced my wife's salary. And it's been growing ever since. And today it's a seven-figure business.
I love it. You kind of just not leapt right into it, but you fell into it and then you stayed there. I don't know if you really have the thick skin of an entrepreneur unless you have at least one person in your life telling you you're insane. A lot of people do struggle, though, with taking that leap. But what was the moment when you really saw, I think we can trust this? Was it a certain amount of money, a certain benchmark where you saw this could become something more? Or were you ever worried it was going to be a flash in the pan, one-hit wonder?
I mean, honestly, I went into it thinking it wasn't a smart idea either, but our goals were simple. We just wanted to make $5,000 a month. That was the goal. And what gave us confidence was that my cousin-in-law had started this business selling tweeters online. So there's this like one make of Jeep where the tweeters, they break after a year. And he was making like $80,000 selling this one part for this one make and model of the car. And that's what gave us confidence. Like, it doesn't have to be something like huge and widespread. It can be very niche and still do pretty well.
Are you still selling the handkerchiefs? You still have that company. You said it's a seven-figure business.
Yes.
So what else? Tell me about the evolution beyond that too.
Yeah. So this is our 18th year in business. We actually purchased a warehouse in 2023. So all of our expenses are contained, and it's a business that will last the test of time. I mean, it's been around for 18 years already. Okay. After a year, when we hit six figures, all of a sudden my friends who were busting their butts as lawyers and whatever, they went up to me and they said, hey, I want a side hustle also. So can you just kind of walk me through what you did? So I decided to just document my journey on a blog. Blogging was much bigger. This was 2009. And it turns out like all my friends who had asked me all these questions, they never read the blog at all, which annoyed me. But I did attract a bunch of random people who really wanted to start their own store. And they kept asking for a course, from me. And I was like, I don't want to do a course. I'm already busy running my business and whatnot and working a full-time job. I was a full-time engineering director in the Silicon Valley. But finally they kept asking, and I was like, okay, fine. I will put out a class, and if I get 10 people to sign up, I'll follow through with it. And I didn't have any content or anything. And then I just went up and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I don't have anything, but if you pay and I get 10 people, I will teach you guys what I did. And then 35 people signed up. And at that point I was like, okay, crap, I actually got to follow through with this. And then that's how the class began. that led to a podcast, which led to a YouTube channel, which led to an annual e-commerce conference, which I've been running for like the past 8 years. This will be our 9th year this year.
Mm.
And it just kind of snowballed kind of by accident, really, based on what people wanted and were asking.
I resonate with your story. It's a little similar to mine, although I was a few years behind you. That was the first thing my husband and I tried was e-commerce. We actually sold on Amazon, and it was one of those things where like, let's see if this whole online business thing works. And it did. And then it was the same kind of thing where people were like, wait, how did it work? How did you do that? And we ended up seeing a lot of success and actually had more fun in the education space than even the product fulfillment space in and of itself. So I think you would probably agree with me that the ability to take a skill and expertise in something that you figured out and see it bless multiple people's lives. I mean, 35 people is it's no small feat when you've just started with a blog. That's before social media was what it was, before you could run ads to anything. So what has that journey been like in seeing the impact of this thing you just kind of stumbled upon now being something that has made so many different families financially free?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. What's nice about teaching is that it also forces you to innovate with your own store, right? Because
Mm.
it forces you to keep up to date. So today, I actually use my store as kind of like a laboratory of sorts. So since I have an audience, all these new tools that are coming out that you see in the e-commerce space, they come up to me and they say, hey, Steve, we want you to promote our tool. I'm like,
Mm.
well, I can't promote anything unless I've tried it. And so I try it in the store, get the real numbers, and then report on the results. So today, it's actually a symbiotic relationship, the store
Mm.
as well as the teaching aspect of it.
That's so fun. I love that. So you grew this business while maintaining this family first approach. Now, remind me, do you have multiple books? Is it My Wife Quit Her Job? Was that a book, or was the Family First
No,
the
no, no, no.
book?
Family First is my only book. Probably
Okay.
going to be my only book. I had this like bucket list, and one of them was to hit like one of the bestseller lists and publish my own book. I just completely underestimated how much work that was going to be. It like consumed my life for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah. So
So
we can see it, like I said, on the shelf. Tell us a little bit about that, because I know that a lot of entrepreneurs get started in building some kind of a business, even if it starts as a side hustle, that can very quickly consume your life. So what did you guys do intentionally to create that balance between, okay, wife staying home, she's quitting her job, but how do we not make this even worse or more time consuming than a job?
yeah, so in the beginning, like I said, we did it so we could stay at home with the kids. But something happens, I think, to most entrepreneurs. I want to say almost all of them because I have all these mastermind groups with other entrepreneurs. At some point when you start making money, like our goal was initially $5,000 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once you hit that goal, you tend to move the goalposts. And if that keeps happening, you you get what I call like a fever. Like you just want to grow for the sake of growing, even though you don't even spend like even a fraction of the money that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a trap that I fell into with my wife because I was always pushing to make more. I was always moving the goalposts. Meanwhile, like I'm a cheap guy. Like we're a cheap family. We don't spend that much money. So at some point, my wife went up to me and she said, this is not fun anymore. Like
Mm.
I'm working my butt off. And the whole point of all this was so we could spend more time together. But now like we're spending all this time trying to grow for what? Right. And that's what the book was all about for me, because it was about remembering why we started the business in the first place and how to not get caught in that same trap that we got caught in.
So what are some of like your top strategies, even from the book, that you'd recommend? Because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are in the same, the same swimming pool. They're trying to build businesses so they have time freedom. And a lot of times that will do exactly what happened for you, like you said, where it'll pull it away. So what do you recommend if you are just starting out or in those early stages to maintain some of that harmony?
I mean, I think in the early stages when you're not making any money, you're going to have to bust your butt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's no way around it. And you have to go into this with a time frame that you're going to do this at least 3 to 5 years. Most of
Yeah.
the people that you see, you know what I don't like about social media is that everyone always just posts their results and they
Mm-hmm.
never talk about like what it took for them to get there. And of course, at steady state, like today, I work about 20 hours a week and everyone sees that and goes, okay, I can start this business and work just 20 hours a week and make 7 figures. That's not the case early on. Maybe in steady state, that's true. But if you're first starting out, you first need to understand your purpose, your why. What I didn't tell you earlier was that before we started our business, I had been talking about starting a business for like 2 years, maybe even
Mm.
longer than that. but I could never pull the trigger because I was pretty complacent. Like I was making a decent salary in my job. Oftentimes, it's all mental. You need some sort of trigger to get you to do
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And that trigger for us was starting a family. And the other thing you need to realize, and I don't know if you've heard of the four burners theory before, but basically your life is composed of four burners. So there's the family burner, there's the friends, there's the work burner, and there's the health burner. Okay. You can't have all four burners on at the same time. You gotta make sacrifices. And so really it's all about prioritizing which burner that you want. And so for us, family is always the top burner, and it helps you just reevaluate every now and then where your burners are kind of set at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that analogy, and analogies are so helpful because I think a lot of times it can feel so unachievable when you are, you have all of these different things that are trying to be balanced at the same time. A lot of people would say balance is really never possible. And I think you nailed it where it's like, it is if you're willing to make certain sacrifices and there have to be boundaries in place and there has to be that central focus. And I think for me, I found that to be true as well, where it's not like you're saying your health just has to suffer while you're building your business or you can't have any friends. It's just like making sure that you know what is the top priority right now so that that can take precedence over everything else. So yeah, makes perfect sense because a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they have to hustle 24/7. And I know you said in the beginning, yeah, that's pedal to the metal. You have to do the work. There's no really escaping that. And I agree with you that social media can make it seem like, I know it did this for me. If you're not having overnight success, if you're not having fast success, you must be doing it wrong. When in reality, if I just stay the course, I'm doing everything right. It just takes a lot more time than we think. So how have you kind of shifted and stayed out of that hustle culture for yourself, even as now your business has expanded where you have multiple different business types that you're running? How do you kind of function in the CEO role?
I think it helps to be in mastermind groups. And
Mm,
for people in the audience who don't know what that is, it's basically when you just hang out with other entrepreneurs and you share your results with them and you share your problems. It's only by understanding what other people are going through who are real entrepreneurs, not social media, that
mm-hmm.
you can understand that what you're doing and what you're facing is actually normal. Let's take the tariffs right now, since that's like a hot topic.
Yeah.
All my other e-commerce entrepreneurs, I mean, they're all feeling the same thing. And it helps to be able to share these strategies with each other, like how we're dealing with these tariffs, how we're avoiding them, and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that I would say is the number one thing. And stay
Mm.
off social media if you can.
Yeah. And with that being said, what is the primary channel? I mean, are you selling on your own website, your own storefront? And how are you driving traffic? And what do you kind of recommend to people now who are building new stores?
So I've always had my own philosophies on that. I remember when Amazon first came out. So first of all, we started our store back in 2007 before Amazon was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Amazon came out, everyone was touting it as the next big thing and whatnot. And throughout the whole process, we do sell on Amazon. I mainly do it for teaching purposes today, to be honest with you. But I remember going into that thinking, wait a second, we're giving Amazon all our products. They're making all the rules and everything. And I've been preaching for like I want to say last 8 years. Like, don't rely on Amazon, don't rely on Amazon. And look what's happened. Every
Mm-hmm.
single year they raise prices. Last year was the most egregious increase, and they continue to do so to the point now where I feel it's almost like an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always focused on our own store, generating our own traffic. For a long time, we got most of our sales from SEO, paid ads, Google and Facebook. But now even the Google landscape is changing, right? Because of
Mm-hmm.
AI, everyone's flooding, the search results with AI generated spam, and Google doesn't know how to deal with that. And so Google's dying, right? It doesn't give as good results as AI. And I think AI search is just going to take over. So again, you got to be constantly shifting your strategy. So today we're taking more of a social approach. We're going to be starting to make more videos that kind of, show like what running the business is like. Maybe some little the arguments that my wife and I have working together. We're talking. So we sell wedding handkerchiefs. We're going to start telling the stories of our customers, how they got together, their romance stories and
Mm.
whatnot. So things are always changing.
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned like try to stay off social media. Do you mean more as a consumer? And
As a
it's
consumer,
really,
yes.
yeah. So you agree it's like really the most powerful place right now that you can be as a business owner, selling products,
Yeah.
selling virtual, coaching, anything. That is the space to be.
Yes, but I don't believe in social media for children, and I try to stay off it from a consumption standpoint, with the
Mm-hmm.
exception of seeing what's working right now for other businesses.
Yeah.
So I actually have two accounts. One I use where I only browse what businesses are doing so I don't get caught up in the algorithm. And the other
Mm-hmm.
one I could just kind of use for personal use. And that one is like all sports,
Mm-hmm.
shorts. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and I think you bring up a really important point for there's a lot of business owners who are still resistant to that. And I think it can be really easy when something worked for a really long time, right? SEO worked for a really long time. Nobody ever thought that that would not be a
Yeah.
viable strategy. And I'm seeing, I know you said you had a blog. I'm seeing bloggers who are moving to other platforms because there's just different ways to monetize their content. And the Google analytics, the Google searches are just not producing the same results. And I think the thing that I mean, I will be super interested if this ever shows, but the only thing that seems to be staying pretty consistent right now is the connection. Like you have to build some kind of community, some kind of audience. And if you only rely on ads and only rely on kind of these technical things, you're going to fall behind. So what do you recommend? I know you mentioned a couple things like telling stories and really connecting on a human level. What else are you seeing in the social landscape that can help people who sell physical products to market themselves, market their offers without it being like, buy this, buy this.
Really, it's just all about being likable.
Mhm.
And you really can't, I mean, not everyone's going to like you, obviously. But if you just
Mhm.
put yourself out there, don't even advertise your products. Like, just talk about like the day to day, like the challenges that you face running your business. Show it in action. People, you don't even need to mention your business name because people
Mhm.
will look to see what you do and they'll click on your link in your profile. And so today, you don't even need to sell. You just need to be likable. People will find
Mm.
you out.
Yeah. So do you feel
So
like it's
yeah.
pretty imperative to build a personal brand or some kind of face to a company, even if you're selling like t-shirts, for instance? Do you think that it's going to become more and more important to show up as that person, human connection, rather than just like post a bunch of pictures of the shirts that you sell?
Okay. I would say, especially if you're selling t-shirts, you need to do this. If you're selling, well, let's take True Classic Tees as an example, right?
Mhm.
They sell plain t-shirts, but they're a nine-figure company. Their t-shirts are 30 bucks. I actually own a bunch. And the way they resonate with people is they target the Life Force 8. Are you familiar with the Life Force 8?
No.
It's basically the 8 aspects that that entice people to buy something. And so I can't remember the 8 right off the top of my head, but one is like keeping up with the Joneses, sexual companionship, and just basically feeling better about yourself. And the way
Mhm.
True Classic Tees does it is they sell these t-shirts that emphasize your arms and
Mm.
take in your stomach. So as a guy, you look better, right? And so that's their whole pitch. And it works because it appeals to the Life Force 8.
Mm.
Um, so if you're doing t-shirts, which is about as commodity as it gets, like you
Yeah.
definitely have to be doing something, whether it be social media or ads that target the Life Force 8.
Mhm.
However, if you sell something a little more niche that not a lot of people are selling, let's just take what we sell, wedding handkerchiefs. It's still pretty niche. You don't necessarily need to do this because it's so niche, but it greatly helps to do so.
Mhm. Yeah. And kind of just having a balance of the two where people can connect and they can see those stories like what you guys are doing, but then the product in and of itself is so connected to the story. And I think I have a friend who is selling like adventure wear for families who are really adventurous and she doesn't want to share her kids on social media. So we've been brainstorming and masterminding on this like what does somebody like that do on social? And I gave her some of the same recommendations like just speak to the people who are going to buy your products and you don't have to be hard selling. I think those brands who are still focused on that and their whole social media feed is just product, 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 like
Yeah.
you can last for a certain amount of time, but eventually if you're not keeping up and focusing on growth, then you're going to fall behind new brands that are going to come and like totally blow you out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, there's no big turnoff than if you look at a social feed and just see people hawking their products. It just
Mhm.
doesn't work that way anymore. Incidentally, that's the foundation of my education side of my business, mywifequitherjob.com. Like I don't really overtly sell. I just teach and I just talk about what we're doing with our business. And usually that's good enough.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and it's creating some kind of value. I think we've shifted from like this authority because you have a huge following. I mean, that's always a fundamental piece that people are going to look at, but people will stick around if you're offering value and that can come from entertainment, that can come from information. And so are you referring to, especially to like the podcast, the YouTube channel, you're just there to share the
Yeah,
value. You're not
exactly.
on there doing sales content, pitching your programs. It just kind of
Correct.
happens because you're
Right.
warming them up and you're providing value. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. It's such an important shift. You brought up the tariffs and you brought up some of these things that are hindering in some ways. Are there any other nitty-gritty things we can talk about if somebody's interested in having a product-driven business? Like, I know that everything shifts and nothing is forever when it comes to who's a president or who's in charge of things. But in right now's climate, any recommendations you have for people? Is it still a really good time to create a physical product business? And if so, what are some of the best ways to do that?
So I think, despite all the tariffs and right now, it's actually easier to start a physical products business than if you were already in it already before these tariffs. And the reason why is
Hmm.
because most people have been producing in China, right? And these
Mm-hmm.
tariffs happen really suddenly, like especially, 145% and whatnot. And so if you're already selling something, then you have to shift pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just starting out, like you have the freedom to make your stuff anywhere in this climate. So, and the other thing about tariffs is that they affect everyone equally, right? It's not like it's just you or targeted to you. So you have time to pivot. Like we've been pivoting ever since Trump's first administration back in 2016. We saw kind of like the writing. I never in a million years thought he'd get elected again. But back during that time, we'd already shifted some of our production to India, Europe, and we even have a couple of USA suppliers. Granted, they're a lot more expensive right now, but we had them and we offer those products on our site. Now that all this stuff is shifting, and I don't foresee us like going to tariff zero on China, for example. So we're looking more towards India, the US,
Mm.
and Europe and all those other places right now also. And so if
Yeah.
you're looking to start an e-commerce business right now, I would China's still probably going to be the best for a lot of things. It just depends on what you sell. For what we sell, we can go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I would recommend that you take a China plus one strategy, which means
Mm.
that you look in China and you look in other countries as well. But the sky's the limit. Like tariffs didn't change like the physical products landscape because that's never going to go away. The
Mm.
same rules apply.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. So with your business, I know you guys started with the handkerchiefs. Have you added more products to that, or do you have any other physical product stores that you've explored different niches or different things like that?
Yeah, we sell napkins, we sell aprons. Our thing is personalization. And I
Mm.
would say like for everyone who's listening to this, if you're going to sell something out there, think of ways that you can add value to it that make yourself unique. So personalization is our thing. And I encourage everyone to do something that's a pain in the butt to do.
Mm.
You want higher barriers to entry. So we have like 6 embroidery machines. They cost about $10,000 each. We have printing machines that are like $10,000 each. There's a much higher barrier to entry, but on the flip side of that, it's much harder for someone to copy us,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so we've actually transformed our business over the years into having less SKUs and focusing more on the personalization aspect because the margins are higher. They're like 90+%. And it's less likely that someone's going to go through all the pain to compete with us.
Yeah. Good, important value. I think I've heard that consistently across, even I interviewed somebody who has a restaurant business, and it's like simplify down what you offer, but make that thing really, really good so that you can stay really competitive in a sea of there's so many more people who are selling and starting these different businesses. So having that be a differentiator makes a ton of sense. With that being said, too, I know that there's a lot of people who might obsess, and it can be a procrastination technique to get the best quality. What is your take on that when there's so many people out there and there can be somebody who launches something tomorrow, uses drop shipping, just gets it out there and simply succeeds because they are willing to make content, build a brand, and just hit it really hard versus those who are like, I would never in my wildest dreams design on Canva and put out t-shirts designed on Canva. Like they're really all about high quality. Do you feel like it's just a matter of choose one, or do you think that you will have more longevity by focusing on a higher quality or even kind of what you're doing, personalization?
Okay, so I've never been a fan of drop shipping at
Mm.
all. I think you're a middleman. It's a dead end business model. You might be able to make a couple bucks here and there, but it's not going to be a long term business. And in fact, I know very few people, and not only that, drop shipping from China is dead because the de
Mm-hmm.
minimis changes that are happening on May 2nd, everything drop shipped from China is just going to be way too expensive. And that's why places like Temu and Shein are hurting. They're going to be in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So I never recommend dropshipping ever, unless you have no money at all to start and you really want to get started. Then you can dip your toes in dropshipping, figure out what sells, and then later maybe, carry inventory or private label something based on the data that you've gathered. But I would never, ever recommend dropshipping if you can help it, because you're adding no value to the equation.
Mm.
Now, imagine if you sell something high quality. I mean, it's the same. Like if you're going to spend the time starting a business, do one that can last the test of time and not some quick money making scheme.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think creating something that is fundamentally better, something that you are really proud to stand behind. I see that probably there's times people, they don't even want to associate their name with the business because they're just trying to like create the cash flow and not necessarily solve a problem or create any kind of impact. So for you guys, like even when you landed on the handkerchiefs, it was a need that you personally had that wasn't being fulfilled. What other things should people be looking at in terms of trying to, like, I would actually love to know the ratio of people who come and are students of yours. Do a lot of them already have the idea and they just need the system on how to sell it? Or a lot of people still out there looking for the right thing to sell?
I would say the bulk of the people who sign up with my class don't know what they're going to sell. And,
Mm-hmm.
and to a certain extent, that's better because I have a framework that allows you to analyze these things and make yourself different during the whole product creation process.
Mm-hmm.
The people that do sign up with something already in mind, they actually come to me. They're like, oh, I sell jewelry. I sell T-shirts. I sell cell phone cases. And there's really nothing different about what they're selling. They just took some products that they found, and usually it's drop shipping actually, and they just slap it
Mm-hmm.
up. That's never going to sell anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? The amount of work it takes to market a product is going to be the same no matter what you sell. So why not spend that effort on something that will make your life easier, something differentiated? It doesn't even have to be better. It just has
Mm-hmm.
to be different. And then you can target the Life Force 8, to sell pretty much anything. Like I'm very confident that you could actually sell anything as long as you can trigger the right emotions. My favorite example of this is this company, Dr. Squatch. Have you heard of Dr. Squatch?
I have, yeah.
They sell men's soap, right?
Yeah.
And as a guy, like, I don't care what soap I use, right? When I go to the hotel, I just use whatever's there. And my wife is horrified whenever I do this because she's like, oh my God, you're just going to use the hotel stuff that's going to dry out your skin. So I don't care. So how do you get guys to care about soap? Well, if you watch any Dr. Squatch commercial, it's always some woman like smelling their guy going, oh my God, you smell so good. I want to jump you right now. Right. So they're really appealing. They're really just selling sex. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really the emotions that you target in selling what you want to sell that actually makes someone buy. And of course, you want to make sure that what you're selling is high quality, because the other thing that most people underestimate is repeat business, right? You want someone to buy something and you want to be able to cross sell them other products that you have, or in the case of soap, you want them to continue buying. And
Mm-hmm.
that's another big problem with dropshipping, especially dropshipping from China. Usually the product has very little quality control. It's cheap, it'll break, and you might get someone, but you're not going to fool them twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. You're right. So I love all of that. And I think I would love to know your take on this and how you kind of guide your students too when they come in. What are they doing to discover product market fit, or how much time do you recommend people testing a product to see if it's the most viable thing they should be selling? Because I know a lot of times people get so caught up in the development for so long and then they go to market. So do you have people kind of pre-sell or try out the marketing before going all in and buying a ton of inventory?
It really just depends on the person. Like
Mm-hmm.
if the student comes in with even a small audience whatsoever, I usually have them do some sort of pre-sale or something like that. But to be honest with you, these days, there's so many tools that will tell you how much a product is making already. So you don't have to guess at demand. So there's tools like Jungle Scout and Helium 10 that allow you
Mm-hmm.
to see how much any Amazon listing is making. You're probably familiar with that if you sold on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon. You can actually even tell how much any Shopify store is making. There's this tool called Shop Hunter. And I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I think it just adds products to the cart and it keeps track of inventory in every person's Shopify store until they're out of stock. And so you can get an idea of how much any Shopify store is selling on a certain product. So the
Mm-hmm.
demand isn't necessarily the problem. Um, it's really just figuring out what is selling and then putting your own spin on it and then putting it on a market. Buying in, whatever your risk tolerance is. Like for me, it's usually like 500 units. I'll buy 500 units of anything just to give it
Mm-hmm.
a try.
Yeah. And so have you seen people who market a product, they have a really good viable product, but if they just miss the marketing a little bit, like is that usually where you have people start, is reassessing their marketing approach or looking at the product itself?
If they
Like where
already
do you
have a
kind of
product, you
begin?
mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If they already have a product, and assuming they're not selling on Amazon, then I help them figure out what their angle is going to be. And there's a lot of guesswork involved. So let's just take
Mm-hmm.
handkerchiefs, for example. So our angle has always been weddings, but there's actually other classes of customers out there. There's actually people who just love using handkerchiefs. There's eco-friendly people who want to use those instead of tissues. And the way you market to people who want to give gifts, people who are eco-friendly, and people who just collect like handkerchiefs, you have to talk to them in different ways,
Mm.
right? And so when you're thinking about running ads, you gotta create the copy very carefully for each segment and see which segment works. And then once you find out what works, and this, you're gonna burn some money doing this. Once you figure out
Mm-hmm.
what works, then you double down on it.
Yeah. Okay, I love that you brought up ads. I heard the segment word, which triggered my awareness that that's kind of the world we're talking about right now. Where have you seen the most success? I know you mentioned early on you had Facebook and you had Google ads and everything. So have you tested TikTok ads? Are you selling products? I actually want to know your take too. Separate question. If you have tried TikTok Shop, if you've seen success on that, if something you recommend.
So we have not tried TikTok Shop yet, mainly because there's been a lot of uncertainty around TikTok. Is it banned? Is it
Mm-hmm.
not banned? Are we going to buy it? Are we going to not buy it? So and also TikTok Shop requires a special type of product to be successful. Like
Mm.
it's got to be like an impulse buy, preferably in like the beauty space or gadgets or whatnot. And I'm not sure that our product falls specifically under that category.
Mm-hmm.
And also you have to have really high margins to make it work. Like I have tons of friends that make TikTok Shop work, not necessarily from a profit perspective, but from an awareness perspective that has a halo effect in all their other channels. So
Mm.
you kind of have to go in with the right mindset also.
Okay. So ads, where are you still using that as a primary source for your store now? And where are you seeing the most success? I mean, it's 2025.
Yeah,
So
I
anybody
mean,
listening to this,
yeah. No, Meta ads still work really well. Google ads, I still run them, but Google ads are always capped, right, by the amount of
mm,
search volume, which in my opinion is going down. Like I know all the stats out there say that, Google still has the majority search, the search market share, right? But there's predictions. I think Gartner just put out a study that by 2026, Google will lose 30% of their traffic towards AI, right? I already see it
mm,
happening. My mom doesn't even use Google
yeah,
anymore. And when my mom
I don't
stops using
either.
something,
Yeah,
something is up, right? So I
yeah,
think the Google channel is going down. I think social media is where it's at, actually.
mm,
Organic.
yeah. S- So you're not selling products on TikTok Shop. Have you tried TikTok ads?
No, we have not tried TikTok ads, mainly because I've spoken to my colleagues about that. And and there's a bunch of people in my community. They're kind of lukewarm on it. Like if you have a good organic post that you can run ads on it, you might be able to get it to work. But for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, they've just been focusing on organic, and that's what's been
Mm,
working. Organic or
yeah,
TikTok Shop, if you can do it, if your product falls into that fit. I don't know. What have you been
cool.
seeing?
I mean, I'm seeing a little bit of both, but I'm even thinking of from a consumer behavior standpoint. I am probably less likely to know I'm clicking on an ad and click on an ad. And if I'm taken off platform, I almost instantly just go right back to the platform. Like it's so
Yeah.
funny how if it takes me to another browser, Instagram, not so much. Like I'll open things, but TikTok, I'm like, nope, I just want to keep doing my thing. I
Yep.
do see though, like you mentioned, the organic posts that you could put ad spend behind. It's so fascinating to see how well advertisements are becoming so integrated into our behavior and what we're normally watching anyway, where I don't even realize I'm looking at an ad 60% of the time. Like I have to
Yep.
go down and look and see that it's sponsored. So, and that was going to be my next question or thought is how much have you yourself and seen your students leverage like user generated content and more of this organic feel to your ads versus just like, here's the thing. Have you made
Yeah.
that shift to yourself?
So we haven't quite made that shift just yet. Well, like we're transitioning. Like I've been very resistant for social media for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
because everything was always going well. We were ranked in the top of search for a long time, and I do not like social media because that's just not my personality. but I'm
Mm-hmm.
forcing myself to do it now because I think that's where it's going to be at. To
Yeah.
answer your question, the students of mine who sell jewelry have been kicking butt on social media. So they just give away free jewelry to influencers, and the influencers do all the marketing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And, they pay them a commission. They have an ambassador program where they get free jewelry every like 3 months or so. And that program has worked really well to build an army
Wow.
of influencers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's still a pretty viable thing too. Are you seeing there's still a good opportunity, especially for these micro influencers, people who are not going to charge thousands and thousands of dollars to promote? I think it's such a symbiotic relationship there too, where it's so cool. I've been on both sides of this equation as somebody who can make really good money doing affiliates and having, influencer partnerships, and then also being the person who wants to leverage influencers and give them things. They both create revenue. Like, it's such a win-win, and I hope it's something that never goes away and that both can continue to grow together and find ways to put money in each other's pockets. So are you seeing that being, I know you mentioned you're having a lot of students crushing it with jewelry, but there's opportunities to do that to where you're not having to have a ton of cash output to have more exposure. Do you find it's maybe even sometimes cheaper than running ads?
Absolutely. The hard part is finding out those influencers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to find ones that haven't been discovered yet, so to speak, but they put out really
Mm-hmm.
good content and engage with them early. Because once they're established and they know their worth, then they tend to charge outrageous prices to the point where, you question whether it's worth it. And then all those
Mm-hmm.
platforms that have influencers on them already, those tend to be, in my opinion, the worst bets because
Mm-hmm.
they already know like the market value and whatnot, and it's just going to be a lot more expensive. So if you want to do
Mm-hmm.
this correctly, you're going to probably have to do your own legwork and
Mm.
find those hidden gems.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice because I know we'll just use a little lingo here. Like, you can flat fee. That was a mouthful. You can pay flat fee to influencers where you're just giving them a certain amount to talk about your products. But I think what even influencers are loving more and more is that affiliate partnership,
Yeah.
to where it's like, well, you're going to get paid the better you actually market and talk about this product. And, we're all going to have a successful partnership. So I think
Yeah,
it's a
a
great
one
leverage
post
point.
and done does not really work very well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have to have people post consistently or whenever they can about your product over time. One and
Mm,
done's, yeah, one and done's are no good.
yeah. Okay, wow. We've covered a ton in terms of the product development and everything. You also have your podcast, you have other forms of education that you're providing to people. What is your favorite? Like, do you still just love the process of formulating products and being in the physical product world, or do you love more so the education? And do you see what's kind of your hot take on that? You see that continuing to grow even with the advent of AI?
They go hand in hand. And to be honest with you, I've always been a reluctant teacher, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I see that a student is really putting in the work and they're working hard, I want to help that person a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you're in the education business, there are always going to be these people that come in, they don't do any work, and they just ask questions that, are covered in like the first video, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the students I do not like. And what I've found over the years is that by raising my prices, I'm actually weeding out like the tire kickers. And so I've
Mm,
actually enjoyed teaching a lot more ever since I've raised my prices.
interesting.
Um, on the physical product side, I like that a lot also because mainly right now AI is a hot topic, and it's just really fun applying AI to a real business and seeing real results. And then all the new innovations that come in the e-commerce industry, like I can't teach unless I have the store. And that's why I say they go hand in hand. So I
Mm,
like both equally for different reasons.
mm-hmm. And then do you see there always needing to be this personal touch and this value from a person who's in there in the weeds doing it versus just asking AI? I mean, I think you almost answered that in saying there's a lot of people who just want information and they're just going to kick tires and sit there and waste time. And there's value in seeking out a mentor. Do you think that we're just still on the cusp of what the education space can do for people if that's a path that they want to pursue?
Well, e-commerce is not a black and white thing, right? I can teach a lesson that's very good, very specific, very accurate, but then someone will watch it and then screw the whole thing up, even though they've
Mm-hmm.
tried, right? I have a lesson on website design, and I talk about having your value props, single call to action above the fold. And then, people will listen to those directions, right? But then they'll create like a website that just doesn't look like that. There's an art and a science to all this, right? And I don't think AI is going to be able to replace that easily. And so, and every business is different. Like one piece of advice that I might give someone who's selling t-shirts might be completely different for someone who sells like boat anchors, for example, right? So there's all these little nuances where I don't think that AI will be able to replace that very easily.
Yeah.
Or being able to figure it out on your own. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think what's so cool about this that I keep seeing across the board is that the more technology we have, the more it's bringing us together. I think there's been this fear that it'll tear people apart, but I think we're gravitating more to wanting human connection, wanting human guidance, and wanting more in our relationships. And at the end of the day, that really is what AI and technology should do. It should free up the things that have kept us from connecting. That goes right along with your whole philosophy, right? Like we shouldn't create more work for ourselves. We shouldn't make it harder if we don't have to. We should take the win and have better relationships and connect more to people and show up as leaders. I think for me, there's been a fear of, oh my gosh, like the thing that I'm really good at, AI could totally help with, but there's always going to be a space for me to step in and be the context for all of that information and still have joy in leading and helping other people navigate their way through entrepreneurship. So yeah, I think there's balance.
Here's the problem with today, which is completely different than 10 years ago. There's like too much information out there now.
Yeah. Yep.
There's just way too much of it. You don't even know what's right or wrong. So that's why it's important to find someone that you trust, and then you can just cut out all the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, where's the best place for people to connect? We've talked about the podcast. Where's like the hub they can go? We'll link to everything in the show notes, but just for those listening.
So if you guys are interested in learning how to sell online, I offer a free 6-day mini course over at mywifequitherjob.com. It's like right on the front page. Just click the big green button. If you want to see me like talk and give, my YouTube channel is a great source for that. Lately, I've been talking about more things in the news, but usually I do some teaching lessons too. It's just tariffs have been just this hot topic. And like my last video, for example, I talked about how tariffs are affecting my business, but how they're also affecting the factories that I work with, and just kind of giving the contrasting views. If you want just commentary, like I have a business partner, her name is Tony. We just kind of go back and forth about what we're working on and what we're seeing in a more conversational style. That's what that podcast is all about. And if you want to learn how to sell online, I offer a class over at profitableonlinestore.com. If you want to learn how to build an audience, like whether it be through YouTube, podcasting, TikTok, or whatnot, I also offer a class called profitableaudience.com. And those are the only 2 classes I teach. I don't think I could handle more than 2 classes, honestly.
I love it. Thank you for all the insights. I think we're feeling the call to action to get on social media, use it wisely. And I just appreciate all the little nitty gritty avenues that we went today. So thanks for being an open book.
Cool. Thanks for having me.